The Crusades represent one of the most significant and debated series of events in world history. Spanning several centuries, these campaigns were complex phenomena, driven by a mix of religious fervor, political ambition, and economic motives. The fundamental question remains whether they were primarily holy wars or sophisticated power struggles. To understand the Crusades, one must first look at the state of the world in the late 11th century. The Byzantine Empire, the heir to the Roman legacy in the East, was facing a severe threat from the Seljuk Turks. These nomadic warriors had conquered vast swaths of Anatolia, the heartland of the Byzantine Empire. In 1095, Byzantine Emperor Alexios II Komnenos sent a desperate appeal to the West for military assistance. This request for aid would be the catalyst that ignited the entire crusading movement. Pope Urban II, a shrewd and powerful pontiff, saw a golden opportunity in the emperor's plea. He aimed to heal the Great Schism of 1054, which had split the Christian world into the Western Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. Furthermore, Urban sought to assert papal authority over the secular rulers of Europe. He also wanted to redirect the violent energies of Europe's knightly class outwards. At the Council of Clermont in France, Pope Urban II delivered a sermon of immense historical importance. He called upon the knights of Christendom to take up the cross and embark on an armed pilgrimage. The stated goal was to reclaim the Holy Land, particularly Jerusalem, from Muslim rule. Urban painted a grim picture of the suffering of Eastern Christians and the desecration of holy sites. He promised a plenary indulgence, the full remission of sins, for all who undertook the journey. This spiritual incentive was a powerful motivator in a deeply religious age. The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming, with cries of Deus vult, or God wills it. This slogan became the rallying cry of the First Crusade. However, the motivations of those who answered the call were far from uniform. For many, religious piety was undoubtedly the primary driver. The idea of liberating the land where Christ had walked was a powerful spiritual concept. Yet, secular ambitions were inextricably linked with these holy aspirations. Feudal society was structured in a way that created a large class of landless younger sons. For these knights, the crusade offered a chance to win land, wealth, and a title of their own. Merchants from Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa saw opportunities for new trade routes and markets. The promise of controlling lucrative eastern ports was a significant economic incentive. Even for the common peasant, the crusade offered an escape from the drudgery and hardship of feudal life. The First Crusade, which set off in 1096, was a chaotic and multifaceted affair. It began with the People's Crusade, a poorly organized mob of peasants and minor nobles. Led by figures like Peter the Hermit, this group was largely annihilated in Anatolia. The main, more organized force was led by prominent European nobles. These included Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto. After a long and arduous journey, the Crusaders besieged and captured Antioch in 1098. Finally, in the summer of 1099, they reached their ultimate goal, the city of Jerusalem. The subsequent sack of the city was a brutal and violent event. Crusader chronicles themselves describe a massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. This act of violence has left a lasting stain on the memory of the Crusades. Following the conquest, the Crusaders established 4 feudal states in the Levant. These were the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli. The establishment of these outre-mer states clearly demonstrates the territorial ambitions of the Crusaders. They were, in essence, European colonies transplanted into the Middle East. The survival of these states depended on a constant influx of men and resources from Europe. This necessity led to the calling of subsequent Crusades. The fall of Edessa in 1144 prompted the Second Crusade. Led by King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad III of Germany, it was a dismal failure. This failure highlighted the logistical challenges and political rivalries that plagued the crusading movement. The latter half of the 12th century saw the rise of a formidable Muslim leader, Saladin Tuktak. He united the fractured Muslim states of Syria and Egypt under his rule. In 1187, Saladin's forces decisively defeated the army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem at the Battle of Hadden. Shortly after, he recaptured the city of Jerusalem. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves throughout Christendom. This led to the Third Crusade, often called the Crusade of Kings. It involved Richard, the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. Despite the star power of its leaders, the Third Crusade was only partially successful. Frederick Barbarossa drowned tragically while crossing a river in Anatolia. Philip II returned to France early to pursue his own political interests. Richard the Lionheart won several victories, but ultimately failed to retake Jerusalem. He did, however, negotiate a treaty that allowed unarmed Christian pilgrims to visit the city. The Third Crusade is a prime example of how the personal ambitions and rivalries of kings shaped these holy wars. Perhaps the most blatant example of power politics hijacking a crusade was the Fourth Crusade. Held in 1202, its original objective was to attack Egypt, the center of Muslim power. However, the Crusaders were unable to pay the Venetians for transportation. In a shocking turn of events, the Crusaders were diverted to attack the Christian city of Zara. Then, they were persuaded to intervene in a Byzantine succession dispute. This culminated in the sack of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, in 1204. The Crusaders, who had set out to fight for Christendom, ended up sacking the greatest Christian city in the world. This event permanently damaged relations between the Catholic West and the Orthodox East. The Fourth Crusade serves as the ultimate proof that secular goals could completely supplant religious ones. Later crusades became increasingly diverse in their targets. The Albigensian Crusade, for example, was directed against the Cathar heretics in southern France. This shows the concept of crusading being used as a tool to enforce religious orthodoxy within Europe. The Northern Crusades were campaigns of conquest and conversion against pagan peoples in the Baltic region. These crusades were clear wars of expansion, cloaked in the language of holy war. The Fifth Crusade saw an attack on Egypt that ultimately failed. The Sixth Crusade was unique in that it was resolved through diplomacy. Emperor Frederick II, who was excommunicated at the time, negotiated a treaty that returned Jerusalem to Christian control for 10 years. This crusade was a masterclass in power politics, achieving its goal without a major battle. The final major crusades to the Holy Land were led by the pious King Louis IX of France. Both his Seventh and Eighth Crusades ended in failure. Louis himself died of disease during the Eighth Crusade in Tunisia. By 1291, with the fall of Acre, the last Crusader stronghold in the Holy Land, the era of the Eastern Crusades was effectively over. The legacy of the Crusades is profoundly complex and multifaceted. In Europe, they stimulated the economy by fostering trade with the East. They also contributed to the intellectual life of Europe, by introducing lost classical knowledge via contact with the Islamic world. Anh sao you know we all do your house deal not dead year. So the power of the papacy was, for a time, greatly enhanced. However, the use of crusades against political opponents in Europe eventually devalued the concept. The military orders, such as the Knights Templar and Hospitallers, became powerful and wealthy international corporations. For the Islamic world, the Crusades were a disruptive and violent invasion. They led to a legacy of mistrust and animosity towards the West that has endured for centuries. The memory of the Crusades has been invoked in modern political rhetoric on both sides. In conclusion, the Crusades cannot be neatly categorized. They were not solely holy wars, as the political and economic motivations were too significant to ignore. Nor were they purely power struggles, as genuine religious belief undeniably inspired thousands to act. The Crusades were a uniquely medieval phenomenon, where the spiritual and the secular were so deeply intertwined as to be inseparable. The call to holy war provided the justification and the means for the pursuit of power. Conversely, the pursuit of power provided the resources and organization necessary to conduct these massive holy wars. Ultimately, they were both holy wars and power struggles, a complex duality that defines their character and their enduring legacy. The initial call at Clermont was a religious appeal to right perceived wrongs against fellow Christians. The concept of pilgrimage, a journey for spiritual merit, was central to the Crusader ideal. Many participants sincerely believed they were doing God's work. The hardships they endured on the journey are a testament to their commitment. However, the leadership often had more pragmatic calculations in mind. The creation of the Crusader states was a clear act of colonization. These states were constantly engaged in complex diplomacy and warfare with their neighbors. The internal politics of the Kingdom of Jerusalem were notoriously fractious. Marriage alliances, succession disputes, and personal rivalries often dictated policy. The military orders, like the Templars, became a state within a state. Their vast wealth and independence were a source of both strength and tension. The economic dimension of the Crusades grew over time. Genoa and Venice profited immensely from transporting crusaders and supplies. Established trading posts throughout the eastern Mediterranean. This commercial expansion was a key, if sometimes unspoken, goal. The idea of a crusade was also a powerful tool for unifying a fragmented Europe. It provided a common enemy and a common purpose for a quarrelsome warrior class. The papacy used this to its advantage, positioning itself as the leader of Christendom. The Crusades also had a significant impact on the development of European identity. The stories and legends of the Crusades became part of the cultural fabric of Europe. For the Byzantine Empire, the Crusades were a double-edged sword. Initially, they provided much-needed military aid against the Turks. However, the Crusaders were often unruly and difficult to control. The sack of Constantinople in 1204 was a catastrophic betrayal from the Byzantine perspective. It fatally weakened the empire, contributing to its eventual fall in 1453. The interaction between Crusaders and Muslims was not solely one of conflict. There were periods of truce, trade, and even cultural exchange. Some European lords who settled in the East adopted local customs. However, the overarching narrative was one of religious and military opposition. The language used by preachers to incite crusades was often dehumanizing. This rhetoric fostered a climate of intolerance and violence. The Crusades demonstrate how religious ideals can be manipulated for political ends. They show how economic incentives can hide beneath a cloak of piety. They reveal the complex tapestry of human motivation, where faith, greed, and ambition are woven together. The debate over their true nature continues because there is no single answer. For some individuals, it was a true holy war. For others, it was a strategic power play. For most, it was likely a mixture of both. The Crusades remain a powerful and cautionary tale from a distant past. Their study reveals the enduring complexities of conflict, religion, and power. The narrative of holy war was essential for mobilization on such a massive scale. Without the promise of salvation, it is unlikely so many would have risked their lives. But the structure of the campaigns was determined by the powerful and their ambitions. The choice of leaders, the targets, and the division of spoils were all political decisions. The Crusades were a product of their time, a feudal society steeped in religious belief. It is a mistake to view them through a purely modern lens of secular politics. Religion was a genuine and all-encompassing part of medieval life and worldview. To the medieval mind, serving God and seeking personal advancement were not necessarily contradictory. Therefore, the Crusades were holy wars that were also power struggles, simultaneously and inseparably.